Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, your host. Thank you very much for inviting me into your home again this week. I am happy to be here, and especially this week. I have a little intro here, and then we're going to bring my guest on, but there's something that needs to be said about the ex-Scientology world and Scientology activism in general, especially for us United States-based critics and ex-members. We focus almost exclusively on activities that have happened in the United States. With sometimes we will journey to Australia, or we will journey to the United Kingdom, and we will talk to ex-members or find out about things that are going on in the Scientology world in those regions. And very, very rarely we hear or see something out of Scientology, ex-Scientology world in Canada, in Latin America, and in Europe. And sometimes, very rarely, hardly ever, I think I can count on a couple fingers how often we connect up with any kind of ex-Scientology activity going on in Russia. So there's a big wide world out there. And it's not all just based in the United States. And I have had the wonderful opportunity to talk to people in the ex-cult world from Europe from time to time on this podcast. Robert Orwell comes to mind from years ago, who was a former neo-Nazi, who now works and actually recovers and helps bring back neo-Nazis. I mean, he does some really amazing work with his group in Europe. But what's going on with Scientology in Europe? What's the ex-Scientology world like there? Surely there are ex-Scientologists, and surely they want to say something. So today I am featuring Jakub Jahl. Now, hi, Jakub. Welcome to the show. First off, I want to say thanks for reaching out to me. And you have been doing a lot of work. First off, could you tell the audience where you're from and basically what your relationship is with Scientology?
So hi, Chris, and thanks for having me.
You bet.
So I first get to know Scientology when I was in high school, but in 2014, I was the first time contacted by a Scientology company where I started to work in 2015 and 16 until 2017. And
if I could cut you off for just a second. I'm sorry, I should have asked you this, of course. What country are you talking to us from?
Sorry, I'm from Czech Republic.
Right. Okay, good. So you've been, and you grew up in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, exactly. So Czech Republic is part of Czechoslovakia. It's two countries. I will talk frequently about both of these countries because we have almost the same language. We're right next to Germany and Austria and Poland. So that's our position in Middle Europe.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And please carry on with what you were saying.
Okay. So in 2016-17, I started to find out that the company, the nonprofit company I was working for and helping, was somehow weird. And I've already had an experience from a cult before because I was Mormon. So I was kind of suspicious about this. And I started to do a documentary on it. And only after like a year later, somebody contacted me and told me that the company was a Scientology company, like, because it had the head course, right, for all the head manual for our position and so on. And that was the beginning when I started to find out that Scientology is actively working in Czech Republic to infiltrate those like companies, and how I found out later, even like governmental positions and so on.
Right. And let me clarify for a moment for the audience what we mean by this, because somebody unfamiliar with how Scientology operates might think we're saying that there were Scientologists working at the company, or maybe a Scientology owner of the company, and therefore it's a Scientology company. But actually, we're talking about something a little bit deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
What is it that
all the companies, they have the 7 divisions. They work according to the WISE principles, to the applied technology of Hubbard. and they have the head student's course manual, and they have a head for each position. So that's what I mean by that, that they are, if you're a worker, and we were workers, we had to pay for courses which were basically Scientology courses, like the TRs. We were trained by this in this nonprofit organization, and so that was the beginning of it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, what we're referring to here with WISE is the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises, WISE. This is a Scientology front group. This is a group that puts itself out there as a administrative training and consultancy company, when in fact it is a front group for the Church of Scientology. And the only thing that they consult with for businesses is L. Ron Hubbard's set of policies and issues and guidelines and organizational structures for businesses. They bring the Scientology structure and policy, how Scientology runs its organizations, and they apply that to their own business. And there's an entire process of steps that are done that companies pay for to have Scientology, to have WISE come in, consult with them, rearrange their organizational structure, rearrange the communication system, put Scientology policy as the way the company is run, basically. And this is the way that they have infiltrated or gotten into the Czech Republic and businesses and companies there, is rather than come in. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because Czech Republic is very specific. We have just around 10 or 20% of people of our population in traditional religious organizations. So in our country, like most people are anti-religion. So that's why Scientology pretends to not be a religion, to not be anything religious at all, to just be hidden around this business stuff, which is officially not connected to it, and so on. So that's how they try to manipulate the perception of people here when they ask about, like, are you Scientologists? And they say, no, we just teach, Hubbard's business courses and so on.
Right. So it gives them a layer of deniability, when in fact, if you read the fine print of the contracts and legal documents of WISE, you actually learn very quickly, it's pretty open, I mean, it's pretty blatant that they are bringing Scientology in. And the WISE operation is, the purpose of that activity is to create fertile ground to create new Scientologists. They make no mistake about that. That's not conjectural or my biased opinion. That is literally what they write in their manuals and writings. So it's not even very subtle, but this is how they do come in at first and say, oh, no, it's not Scientology, it's WISE, and it's Hubbard stuff. So you discovered this at a company you were working at?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And then how did
Perfect World? It was a language school, a non-profit thing. It was like support. Officially, all the money which we didn't get, like, for our work, should have got to, like, they were telling that instead of the payment, they were sending the money to children's houses and even for building a school in Africa. And I found out that it was not true at all.
Oh, they were lying about where that money was going?
Yeah. Yeah, and they do it, that's interesting. In Czech Republic, they are doing it frequently, that they pretend to give some money to orphanages, but officially, like, in fact, they are just giving them like free courses or something for the children or for the teachers, instead of giving them the money.
Okay. So they keep the money and then give away free services that are being delivered by people who aren't even being paid very much anyway.
Exactly.
Wow. So it's a nice way to bring in money and pretend you're doing good when in fact you're just delivering nonsense. How long ago was this? When did you first discover this?
2017.
Okay. So you've been looking into this for the last, 6 years then?
Yeah, around that.
Wow.
And then I found out, I contacted my teacher, who was like the main person who was studying Scientology in the 90s. And he gave me his, basically, like, all documentation which he got from ex-members, from all the people, letters which the Scientologists and the church and different companies have written to him, and how they tried to sue him, everything. So that was the moment when I found out that the Scientology church tried to infiltrate Czech Republic from the beginning of the 90s, which was after the Velvet Revolution. That was when capitalism came to Eastern Europe, like Czech Republic, Slovakia, and so forth. And from that moment, we have their files where they write how they got into the National Bank. The guy who was the leader of the National Czech Bank and the later Prime Minister of Czech Republic, he was on their business courses. They got into the Czech, like several governmental companies which were associated with this, even with chemicals. Many of these companies ended being totally bankrupt, which is also interesting. One of the most famous is Xenu. It's a big one. And around 1998, there was a big media outlet when the teacher, which I was talking about, and some other ex-members were openly talking about Scientology and what was happening. It was also the moment when there were some letters leaked because Scientology centers in Czech Republic were sending informations about the people who were coming for the auditing to Germany in those times, to Hamburg. So one of the scientists, he got to all of these papers and published them. So that was another problem for Scientology in Czech Republic. And in 2002, the Czech Ministry of Education published an official warning for all schools that Scientologists are trying to infiltrate them with their education against drugs, with their courses. They were doing this through the 90s, and they are still doing it because many schools don't know about this warning, because it's like 20 years old now. Right. But in those times, 2002 and later, it was a big problem. But it's something that was hidden for a time, and now it's coming to life again.
Excellent.
Scientology in Czech Republic. They've infiltrated a lot of things. They have the basic schools here. I don't know if you have them in America. It's just schools for small children and the first basic degree. So they have Scientology schools. They have 2 big schools and 10 centers in our republic. We have just 10 million people, so we're a small country. Mm-hmm. They have language schools here. They have business sexes, which is schooling even governmental companies. And they are even getting money from the government to do these courses for the governmental units, on different ministries. So that's business success. And then we have the HCA, Upper College Academy, that is run by a guy called Martin Kolenička. He's OT8. So he's a pretty big guy in our republic, and he's the most influential. He's probably the opinion leader, and he's the one who's in contact with the Vienna Celebrity Center. So he's the one who's trying to get celebrities into Scientology.
Got it. So there is still a celebrity center operating in Vienna, in Austria?
I'm not sure if now, but I have a letter like 15 years ago when some person was in contact with his sister who was working there and brainwashed, and she ran away from this Vienna Celebrity Center.
Got it. Got it on that.
Even until now, now probably they're sending the celebrities to Florida because the most famous rapper in our country, Marcus Kaleta, or not one of the most famous, he was sent to Florida. Now he's there again in Tampa Bay, and he was on the Superpowers program with this guy. So
I'm not sure if I can read this.
For celebrities, for people who were in national singing contests like Gabriela Gunčíková, that's also a celebrity. So they are trying to reach out to young people. They have now a young influencer called Charlie Šrámek, who is sharing this through all this TikTok stuff, So they have young people who are spreading their message now.
Right. Yeah, it looks like, I wish I could read certain European languages. I really can't tell what I'm looking at with some of this, but it appears that Celebrity Center Vienna is still a going concern. The HCA, the Hubbard College of Administration, is a wise outlet to train people in Hubbard's business technology or management system, depending on what words you use. That's the Scientology phrasing for it. It's really just Hubbard's methods of how to destroy an organization, because I tell you, the system doesn't work very well. It's how Scientology organizations are run. And if you look at Scientology organizations, they are not thriving, successful businesses. But let me tell you something, because I don't know if we talked about this when you and I spoke before. In the 1990s, when the wall came down, there was a great deal of excitement in the world of Scientology. And I was in Scientology at that time. I was a staff member, and then I became a Sea Org member in 1995. And during that time period, during Scientology events, we would be briefed as Scientologists about the inroads that were being made into Russia and Eastern Europe by WISE. And there were companies that were being touted as fantastic WISE success stories. They just got a little bit of Scientology technology and look at them go. And they had about 3 or 4 businesses over there that they were featuring that were very prominent, big places, hundreds of employees. I think one was a manufacturing company, and I think one was a printing company or something. I can't remember. This was, 20 years ago, but I remember very clearly being very excited as a Scientologist about the inroads being made into Eastern Europe, because Russia had been our enemy for decades. I'd grown up in the Cold War, and that was not a joke. People really thought Russia wanted to kill us and vice versa. So when the wall came down, there were a lot of very happy people over here, including Scientologists. We even took credit for it because OT8 came out, and a year or two later, the wall came down. Yay us, right? So it was all OT8. So we were pretty pumped about all of this. So it's interesting to hear 20 years after the fact from, your investigations of this, that all those companies failed and that WISE thing didn't really help very much. Yet they're still going over there. Do you know how many, you've done a lot of research on this. Do you know how many companies are involved with WISE over there, or how's this going right now?
So the method I use is also using the Truth About Scientology registers, where I can see some of the people, then the leaked WISE list, but I can also find some of them through other investigations. So according to what I found, I think there is around 30 till 50 companies in Czech Republic who are WISE members. And I think there is around few 100,000 companies or people, at least people, members like workers and so on, who have been trained by this Scientology companies in Czech Republic to their business routines. Basically, all of the companies in Czech Republic who are dealing with, like, we will give you advices how to make your company better and so on. Almost all of them, like the biggest ones, they are all Scientology ones.
Wow.
So they're kind of monopole on it.
Wow. So even if a couple of those companies tanked after all this time, some of them are still going. Do they have, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, 200,000 that's a lot of people, especially in a country of only 10 million people. Now we're talking a percentage that's not insignificant. You know what I mean? We start coming up into bigger numbers here. So I can see why you're concerned about this. Do you have any? Go ahead.
Sorry, that is also the reason, because we're an atheistic nation. So there is a big thirst in people for this business things, which are kind of atheistic officially. They are not tied to the official religion. So they like this self-improvement and new cults. And that is the reason why also Scientology influenced some of the politicians. I told you already before that in Slovakia in 2014, there was a president elected who published Scientology, basically self-improvement books in a Scientology company owned by the main Scientologist who has the business success on Slovakia. And he was on his conference talking and so on. So that's Andrej Kiska. And under his rule, he was president 2014 till 2018-19. in this period, Scientology in Slovakia grew like crazy. And in 2018, they have started their first ideal org. So that was the final outcome of this.
Yeah, okay.
And they, maybe you can even, if you edit the video later, you can post here the photo from the celebration. Tony Ortega, he had it somewhere. And there is the mayor of a village or a town called Yasov. And we talked about it. That's the town where the mayor, he's a Scientologist, and there was a murder of some old lady by a gypsy guy from bad background. And he used this to teach all police forces in that town Hubbard's Road to Happiness brochures. And they were supposed to use them in teaching the gypsy, the Roma people, how to behave and how to not be criminal. And Scientology pretends, in Czech and Slovak, they say that the crime rate in Yasov dropped 40%. But on all other websites, in English, in Spanish, French, and so on, they write that through Hubbard's Road to Happiness, the criminality in all Slovakia dropped 40%.
Right.
Which is like unbelievably untrue.
Exactly. Not to mention that if we're going to be, if we're going to get real serious about this, there's no way distributing the Way to Happiness booklet in an area or to a subculture like the Romans, in that area is going to lower crime by 40%. I don't care if you're talking about a village, a city, a state, or a nation. Mm-hmm. That is ridiculous. To bring crime down at those magnitudes of percentages, you have to be doing a very bigger thing than that. You don't, because the Way to Happiness book, in case anybody doesn't know, it's what Scientology positions as a common sense guide to moral foundations. It's a moral code that is non-religious in nature. It's not bound to any deity or supernatural entity. And Hubbard wrote it in 1980. After, the hypocrisy here is so thick, I don't even need to go there, that L. Ron Hubbard is advising people about how to be moral in their lives just trust me, it's one of the most hypocritical moves in all of history. But that being said, these booklets in and of themselves, they're not that bad. I mean, they are a moral code and they aren't connected with Scientology directly. And if you read it, it tells you to brush your teeth and don't drink too much alcohol and don't murder people. I mean, really, really basic, really common sense stuff. Okay. This is nothing fantastic. So there's 0% chance that you could pass out 10,000 of these things, 100,000 of these things, and crime is suddenly just going to drop because everybody's like, oh, I wish somebody had told me not to steal. Now I've read it in a book and now I know I shouldn't be doing that. I mean, that's kind of how silly this whole thing is. But Scientology insists that getting this booklet out will calm things down. Now, let me tell you, there was a story at an event, and I am struggling to remember this. I can only remember a couple bits and pieces. I don't know if it was in Hungary or Czech or in some other Eastern Bloc country that Scientology stated at an event that there was a political rally that had gone bad. Something bad had happened at an election. And one of the people in the election, I'm wondering if it's this mayor or somebody else in the country. I just can't remember. But there was this conflict, and it went on for like 2 or 3 days where they weren't sure what was going to happen, and was there going to be a revolt of some kind or some kind of problem because of this vote. And one of these guys got the Way to Happiness book and just passed it out to everybody in the square, and it calmed everything down, and the election went through, and Scientology succeeded, and the Scientologists were in charge. And it was this big video event. They had film and everything from this thing. I like I said, this is 15, 20 years ago, so I'm sorry I can't remember the details of this, but this is the kind of over the top, taking credit for things that they really didn't have a whole lot to do with at all, I guess is my point. Does any of this ring a bell with you?
Yeah, Scientologists have told me a similar story, but they said that it's happening in South America, that there was this almost political revolution and that only Scientology brochures have calmed it down.
Oh, wow. So they told you guys it was in South Africa, and then they filmed for us that it was in Eastern Europe.
South America. South America.
South America. Oh, South America. Oh, South America. Right. Maybe I am confusing it with that. I thought it was Eastern Europe, though. I was absolutely positive it was Eastern Europe. Okay, fair enough. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. There was another story. It was different. There was an Eastern European story, and there was a story out of South America with rioting and an election. I remember that too. That had to do with one of the first ideal orgs down there. That's what that had, and rioting that was going on at the time. I think it was Colombia. Or Venezuela or something. Anyway, yeah. Sorry for the little side roads down memory lane here, guys. But I really have to dredge this stuff up because funny how I gave this whole intro about Scientology and ex-Scientologists in Europe. But actually, in the world of Scientology, it was often very similar. So much concentration on America and so little concentration on other parts of the world for the most part. So, okay, so you say now you've been tracking this kind of network of activity of Scientology for all these years. So we have a mayor and we have various business leaders and we have Ys going into the country and taking over or trying to have major influence with companies. Who else or what else are you aware of there in terms of what other Scientology activities are going on?
For example, the guy from the HCA, the leader, Martin Kolenčka, who is 88, he's now in the meeting room of the biggest private Czech television. It's called TV Nova. We have basically one governmental, and then there is like several private. Now there are more, but this is like the oldest and the most popular. So he's now traveling there every week for meetings. He's always in like morning shows and some news reflections and stuff like this. So they're trying to go even through the television. And that is something that his student, the celebrity, the rapper, Markus Kaleta, what he was talking about, because he is every day he's making reels where he's talking like, I'm going to make an army of businessmen. I'm going to buy a news media outlet, like a company. I will buy a political party and we will make a revolution and change this country, right? And he's talking about this. Now he made a CD this year. It's called The Man. And on this CD, he's even talking how he's slowly preparing this fame, businessman and connections. And he's waiting for the right time to attack. And then he will attack in a big manner. And that will make our country right again. And he's
wow.
Working with political leaders who are making protests. One of them is called Jindřich Reichel, and he's very famous. They have photos together. They are like connecting their plans together. And he's famous. Maybe you've even heard about it because he tried to redo a Czech version of the Washington insurrection. Basically, on one of the protests, they tried to all of the people, they tried to go into the National Museum because it had Ukraine flags, and they said we have to attack. So they tried to go in, and the police had to catch them. It was like a big problem.
Wow!
And that was this year. So many people are afraid where it's going to go because this political leader who was working with the rapper, he's officially talking about this revolution stuff and so on.
Wow.
And they're all heavy conspiracists. They totally believe and officially claim all the conspiracy things about Illuminati, about vaccines having microchips and stuff like this. So Scientology in Czech Republic is very officially conspiratorial.
Yes.
It's like, I think it's not usual, is it?
Oh, no, it's very usual. Let me actually tell you, Scientology is, as a body, Scientology subscribes to pretty deep level conspiracy theories. L. Ron Hubbard actually created them in the 1960s, building on what would I don't know that he created this, but he certainly was paralleling the idea of the secret government bodies, the count and secret high level meetings and institutions between very, very powerful financiers and bankers and media owners, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. I mean, he would name drop these kind of people. Wow. And he said that these people were colluding knowingly and purposefully to not only run the world, but to actually take out Scientology specifically because they knew it was the only thing, Hubbard claimed, that could undo all of what they were doing. And so Scientology is the key to unlock the door to freedom, right? And it fits right in.
That rings to me, yeah. Because he's saying the same things, like exactly, and naming them. So I think he just read Hubbard's stuff and
there it is.
Reproducing it.
That's right. If you check out, just between you, me, and the audience here, if you check out a lecture L. Ron Hubbard gave in 1967, which is freely publicly available, it's called RJ 67, Ron's Journal 67. That's the lecture where he announces OT3. The level where you do the body thetans and Xenu and all that stuff. But he doesn't tell you anything about Xenu. He just says it's a super secret confidential rundown and it's going to blow your mind. But in that same lecture, he goes on a roll about the Rothschilds and the Carnegies and the rich people. And he names names of British parliamentary members and media outlet owners. And he says, these are the people who are trying to take us out. So he was very detailed in his conspiracy theories, and he only developed them more and more. And over time in Scientology, Sea Org members took this and blew it up even more. And there's whole presentations that they will do at Scientology meetings. They will gather Scientologists and they will brief them on these conspiracies. And they will use this to scare people and get money from them. And I have no doubt they are doing this in the Czech Republic just like they do it here. They'll fly a speaker in who's all prepared. He's got a slideshow and a whole presentation. And they prove how psychiatry and governments are in collusion to take over and deny you your freedoms, and therefore you have to give money to Scientology because we're the only people who are undoing all of this. So, yeah.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. In Czech Republic, the official CCRH, the company, the Scientology part, which is fighting against psychiatry and stuff, and so on, and they are giving small comics book, which is about Atlantis and how Atlantis was destroyed.
What? And
it was destroyed by psychiatrists.
Ha! I love it. I love it. I love it.
Do you want to? In
one lecture, let me tell you, in one lecture, the only place I've ever heard it, L. Ron Hubbard talks about Atlantis. And he talks about Lemuria too. And he talks about how there used to be different civilizations on this planet with technology, and they were overrun. So that feeds right in, man. It all feeds into L. Ron Hubbard's crazy town worldview, and it all goes back to that. Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'll send you the link so you can watch it even now. If you like.
Yeah. I'm not going to check it out right this second, but I will definitely check it out when you send it to after the show here. So, okay. So based on all the work you've been doing and everything, right? Are there any other reveals you have for us in terms of who else is operating in the Czech Republic or around there? Because you're also right next to Hungary, right? And Scientology has a pretty active presence going on over there as well. They have an ideal org in Hungary.
Yeah,
Budapest.
Also. So what I've seen, mostly they are sending people for higher auditing to Denmark because there is the closest European RPF camp. According to our teacher, was even talking to some people Czech people who went to this Danish RPF camp.
When were you hearing about an RPF camp? Because I was under the impression the RPF was canceled now.
Well, it's also, again, like 15, 20 years when he was investigating it.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that would have been true then. That absolutely would have been true 20 years ago, because they did have an RPF. It was in Copenhagen. That is where the center of Scientology activities are for Europe, is in Copenhagen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when they get young people to get into Sea Org, they send them to Ireland. So they are in the Ireland Center.
Interesting. Ireland, of all places. Jesus. Do you know what they're...
Then the most famous people, like Martin Kolenička and the rapper and the owner of the second biggest conspiracy web in Czech Republic, they are all traveling to Clearwater for the Superpowers program. They have all been there. And then the young businessmen and the people in the business companies around these people, they are going to the Free Winds ship. I've even found this young influencer who was there. So they are traveling to the Free Winds.
Got it.
And I think that's basically all I've seen they are traveling, like, mainly.
Good. Well, I'll tell you, going to Flag and going to the Free Winds, when you're looking at somebody who's doing that, you can almost be guaranteed that you are looking at somebody who is really all in with Scientology. It's very, very rare that a relatively new Scientologist will go to the Free Winds. It's happened, but it's very rare. Usually somebody, because you have to be cleared to go to the ship. You have to go through a security process. They don't just let you fly over there and you just walk on the boat. It doesn't work that way at all. And they're very, very careful and selective about who they let on that boat and who they let on the base and in Clearwater. They control that. So if they don't want you there, you're not going to be there. So if these guys are going, that means that Scientology that they are very much in good standing and working with these people.
I know around like 10, 20, maybe even something over 20 people, like businessmen from Czech Republic, who have certainly been on the Free Winds ship in the last 5 years. Yep,
that sounds right. Yeah, so that really indicates a very thriving, wise business activity going on there. Everything you've been talking about, it's the beginning of something awful for Scientology in the Czech Republic. So we want to actually, definitely get you some support and help from the Scientology community here, ex-Scientology community, in fighting this, because Czech Republic, you've been, doing all this work over these many years to document what the hell is going on and kind of map out who the players are and how they're doing this. And by the way, you're not even a former Scientologist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got to tell you, 2 thumbs up, man. Well done. It's not, you've been doing this work, and it's not like anybody's been, even helping you or validating you or anything. Like, good job. You are actually tracing down a very big problem in your country. So thank you for doing all of this and then coming on my show and talking about it.
And thank you for reaching out to me also, because it helped me a lot with even my own psychological state, investigating it when I first talked to you, when you replied to me. So, because even your videos, in the first moment when I was like really deep into it and feeling like, oh no, this is something horrible, your videos were the thing that was keeping me from insanity.
Oh, well, thank you. Really? I'm glad. Yeah. I'm so glad. Well, this is really good. So let me ask you, if you could have, anything you wanted, or if you could move this forward so that we could actually do something about this, what do you think, living in your country, because I don't know your country, right? I don't know your customs and laws and how things get done there. What would have to happen, or what do you think has to happen to start pushing back on this? How should this be approached?
Well, basically, I think it's very easy. Our goal is easy to achieve, because Czech people know that Scientology is a word which is associated with a dangerous cult. So in the moment when they find out, we're reaching out to people who are on this business courses now, right? And all of them, they are like, what's happening? I didn't know that it's such a horrible thing. So the main goal we have to achieve is to get this into the most mainstream news media in Czech Republic, because now a few people on YouTube, even Czech YouTubers, some newspaper are talking about it, but it's not in the national prime TV like times in the television. And that is what has to be achieved, because that is the moment when they lose everything. Because that is something good that Czech people already know this term Scientology as being something very bad from the 90s, because that was when all this mess was coming up the first time. Now they have hidden all their activity. So this is the main thing. And if people from outside can help us, like getting this media outlets in other countries about Czech Republic and about spreading Scientology in Europe, that's the most important thing.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll start in the ex-Scientology world here and try to get your voice more well known here, so that the situations in the European sphere of this activity start becoming more known. And I am very hopeful, by the way, if you want to reach out to any other YouTubers or content creators on your side of the pond who could connect with us, and we could connect with them, and maybe we could start getting some more talking being done on the internet about this. That it's always small, it's always, you know, maybe not enough, but it's a start and it's something. And just like, you know, my videos were helping you, maybe more video content can help other people in the Czech Republic to wake up to this. And that's how it gets into the mainstream media, is people start talking about it, you know, and that's what I'd like to. That's what I'd like to help make happen. So, excellent. How do we'll put contact information for you? How should people reach you, or do you have a website or a way to be reached?
They can contact me on Instagram or Facebook, or they can contact me via email or on YouTube. But on YouTube, it's complicated to contact. So we can put it into the informations under the video, maybe. Yeah,
that's what I was going to do. I'll put your Twitter or your Instagram and your Facebook links in the description section of this video, this podcast. So check that out if you want to reach out to Jacob directly, which I hope you do, because he's a really cool guy, and he's got mounds of information on this. There are links and information to find on this, you know. And again, kudos to you, man. You've really been working hard on this, and I hope that this is the beginning of, you know, like all that work going in a direction where we can really do something about this. So again, I want to validate you for all the work you've done.
Thank you. Without you, it would not be possible.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're the second most important person after Hubbard for me.
Wow. Well, okay. I'll take that. All right. Good job. Okay. So I guess on that, are there any other major or important points we should cover right now on this topic, or have we pretty much covered it?
I think this is perfect.
Yeah, good. Okay, me too. All right, folks. So now you know. Let's do something about it. You know, let's get this known by the other channels and whatnot as well, and let's see if we can't get something going to fight Scientology in the Czech Republic, just like we're fighting Scientology in the United States. And on that happy note, let's wrap up the show. I will see you guys next week. Jacob, thank you again.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye, guys.